Modern medicine is better today than it ever has been, yet paradoxically we're seeing a rise in the use of complementary and alternative treatments. It is now not uncommon here in Britain to see multiple alternative health stores on the high street, all of which are selling a plethora of products which have very little, if any, evidence of their effectiveness. Now, most of these health stores offer nothing but false hope, something which is pretty insidious on its own, whereas others offer treatments and products which have the real potential to harm. Most, in my opinion, are staffed by people who give out advice that has the real potential to, well, kill. Now, on this channel, I've talked about various quackery in the past. I've talked about turpentine therapy, ozone therapy, Jilly juice, black salve, MMS, to name a few. Now, most people know that these things are nonsense just because of common sense, but there is one alternative treatment out there that I believe goes under the radar, which is just as dangerous as the quackery that I've just mentioned. A all-natural cancer cure that has been shown time and time again to be utter garbage. A all-natural cancer cure which has the real risk of poisoning someone with cyanide who consumes it. I'm of course talking about this little bugger here, the apricot kernel. And I'm also talking about a drug called Laetrile and a vitamin called B17, a vitamin that doesn't exist. Hi Internet, it's me Myles. Now, the story of this quackery starts off all the way back in 1830 with two French scientists who were able to isolate a compound called amygdalin from almond seeds. Now, what they discovered about this compound was that it could be hydrolyzed to form sugars, benzaldehyde, and hydrogen cyanide. Now, skip to the distant future of 1892, and in Germany, this compound was being tested to see if it could help us fight against cancer. What the medics and scientists found out was, no, it can't. And not only can it not help us fight against cancer, it is also incredibly toxic because in the body it keeps releasing hydrogen cyanide. Now you'd think this would be the end of this compound's use in cancer treatment. You'd think a line would be drawn. But no, 60 years later it will be promoted, or at least a hydrolyzed version of it called Laetrile will be promoted as a cancer cure by a father and son act called the Krebs. Ernest T. Krebs Sr. was a pharmacist who got his medical degree from the San Francisco College of Physicians and Surgeons in 1903. During the influenza pandemic of 1918, he became convinced that an old Indian remedy made from parsley was effective against the flu. He set up a company in San Francisco to market the remedy as syrup of leptinol, which he also claimed was effective against whooping cough, asthma, tuberculosis, and pneumonia. The American government, however, were not so convinced, and during the early 1920s his supplies of this syrup were seized by the FDA on charges that his claims were false and fraudulent. Ernest T. Krebs Jr. tried to follow in his father's footsteps and attended a medical college in Philadelphia, before being expelled after repeating his freshman year and failing his sophomore year. After taking courses in 5 different colleges and achieving low to failing grades in his science courses, he finally received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Illinois. Krebs Jr. got a Doctor of Science degree after giving a 1-hour presentation to a now defunct Bible college in Oklahoma. Now, they gave him this doctoral degree even though they don't have a science department, even though they don't have the authority to do so from the state of Oklahoma. This is just all fake, yet for some reason, still to this day, some people refer to him as Doctor. Is it just me, or have you guys heard this story before? About a guy getting a fake doctoral degree and then going around the country saying, hey, listen to me, I'm a doctor.
God said eat the fruit, the vegetables, and the seeds. We don't do that much anymore. We eat the hamburger, french fries, and Coke. But did you know if you eat the seeds to the fruit, you get a vitamin you don't normally get otherwise? These seeds contain a vitamin called vitamin B17. When you eat a peach, you should eat the seed.
You can't tell me that's not amazing. Come on. This backs up my theory that all this stuff, all this quackery, all this nonsense is all interconnected. Anyway, I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, so let's get back to the Krebs. In 1945, Krebs Jr. founded the John Beard Memorial Foundation to develop and apply the controversial theory of the trophoblastic origin of cancer by Scottish embryologist John Beard. Now, in 1902, John Beard hypothesized that cancer cells and cells produced during pregnancy called trophoblasts are the same thing, and that a compound that was produced by the pancreas destroys these cells.
In 1902, John Beard, a professor of embryology at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, reported that there were no discernible differences between highly malignant cancer cells and certain pre-embryonic cells that were quite normal in the early stages of pregnancy. In technical terms, these normal cells are called trophoblasts. Extensive research had led Professor Beard to the conclusion that cancer and trophoblast are in fact one and the same. His theory, therefore, is known as the trophoblastic thesis of cancer.
Beard went on to postulate that if the pancreas fails to produce enough of this compound, trophoblasts will circulate throughout the body of both the mother and infant, making them vulnerable throughout life to cancer. Yeah, so all of that basically is just made up and doesn't have any rooting in scientific fact whatsoever, but don't let that get in the way of a good story, and the documentary A World Without Cancer, you know, that it's promoting a very bizarre story. I mean, listen to this.
Under microscopic examination, most of these tumors are found to resemble a mixture or hybrid of both trophoblast and surrounding cells, a fact which has led many researchers to the premature conclusion that there are many different types of cancer.
So you're probably asking yourself, what on earth does any of this have to do with apricot kernels, amygdalin, Laetrile, or vitamin B17? Well, there's a bit of a jump here. So the theory goes that if the pancreas can't produce enough of this compound, enough of this enzyme to sort out cancer cells, then Laetrile, B17 or amygdalin can sort it out, can take over. Yeah, it's a bit of a jump if you ask me.
But what happens if the pancreas is weak, or if the rate of cancer growth is so high that the enzyme trypsin can't keep up with it? Then what? The answer is that nature has provided a backup mechanism, a second line of defense that can do the job even if the first line should fail. It involves a unique chemical compound that poisons the malignant cell while nourishing all the rest. And this is where the vitamin concept of cancer finally comes back into the picture. The chemical compound in question, of course, is vitamin B17, which is found in those natural foods containing nitrilicides. It's known also as amygdalin, and as such has been used and studied extensively for well over 100 years.
Hi there Internet, it's Future Myles here, the Myles who's currently editing the video you're watching right now. Very meta, I know. Anywho, originally past Myles' plan was just to play this small clip from the movie A World Without Cancer in its entirety. However, Future Myles, who's currently editing this, is getting really knocked off with it. So from now on, I'm going to constantly interrupt this small clip every time they say something that is utterly ridiculous. Starting with this. Yes, it has been investigated for well over 100 years, these compounds, but they've been shown time and time again not to be effective against cancer. And also, they've been shown that they break down in the human body, releasing hydrogen cyanide. I realize I'm sounding a bit like a broken record here, but this is what they do in the human body.
But in its concentrated and purified form, developed by Dr. Krebs specifically for cancer therapy, it is known as Laetrile.
Laetrile is not the concentrated or purified version of amygdalin. It is the hydrolyzed version of amygdalin. It is missing one of its two sugars. This guy doesn't even get the basics of the quackery that he's talking about.
For the sake of clarity in this presentation, however, we shall favor the more simple name, vitamin B17.
It's not a vitamin, but no spoilers right now. Past Myles is going to talk about it in the future. It's getting all timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly right now.
The B17 molecule contains 2 units of sugar, 1 of benzaldehyde, and 1 of cyanide.
What am I looking at right now? Like, as a chemist, as an organic chemist, what am I looking at? This is absolute bollocks. Also, do you notice? 2 sugars. This isn't Laetrile. This isn't vitamin B17 as that guy called it. This is amygdalin. Again, he doesn't know the basics.
All tightly locked together within it. Now, as everyone knows, cyanide can be highly toxic and even fatal if taken in sufficient quantity. However, locked as it is in this natural state, it's completely inert chemically and has absolutely no effect on living tissue. There is only one substance that can unlock this molecule and release the cyanide. That substance is an enzyme called beta-glucosidase.
There are many things that can break this compound down, not just this family of enzymes. And also, again, what am I looking at here? Okay, so we now have 2 sulfurs, we have a carbon and a boron. The 2 sulfurs, which I guess are sugar, are still connected together, even though this enzyme breaks them apart. And the cyanide group, which I presume is a C, and the benzaldehyde, or what will become benzaldehyde group, is just B, but they're still connected, so that's not releasing hydrogen cyanide. What on earth is this? It's rubbish, is what it is.
Which we shall call the unlocking enzyme. When B17 comes in contact with this enzyme, Not only is the cyanide released, but also the benzaldehyde, which is highly toxic by itself. In fact, these two working together are at least 100 times more poisonous than either of them separately.
Bollocks. 100% bollocks. This guy just made that up on the spot.
The unlocking enzyme is not found to any dangerous degree anywhere in the body, except at the cancer cell.
Again, bollocks. This guy just made it up. This family of enzymes is found pretty much everywhere and is not exclusive to cancer cells. And bear in mind, remember, there's only one type of cancer cell. Nuts.
Where it always is present in great quantity. The result is that vitamin B17 is unlocked at the cancer cell. It becomes poisonous to the cancer cell, and only to the cancer cell. There's another important enzyme called rhodinase, which we shall identify as the protecting enzyme. The reason is that it has the ability to neutralize cyanide by converting it instantly into byproducts that actually are beneficial and essential for health. This enzyme is found in great quantities in every part of the body except the cancer cell.
Bollocks. Absolute bollocks. This enzyme is found throughout the human body, and I want to pay special attention to the balls on this guy. Probably could have phrased that a little bit better. To say that, you know what, this hydrogen cyanide that's given off, yeah, it's going to kill all your cancer cells, but you know what, the rest of your cells, it's going to be super healthy for them. Unbelievable. Now, we knew decades before this film was released and decades before the Krebs came on the scene that this whole mechanism of cancer killing is just a load of baloney. Yet unbelievably, some people fell for it. And not only did they fall for it, they started to promote it.
And the cyanide found in the seeds is perfectly fine. Don't let anybody tell you it's poisonous, okay? It is poisonous to one thing. There's only one thing that'll break away the cyanide from the molecule and make it deadly. The only thing that'll do that is the protein coating found around cancer cells. So people that have cancer can take this B17 stuff, and it seems to selectively destroy the cancer cells. There's a great book on the table if you want to read more about the world without cancer and get a whole lot more on the lowdown on that.
Anyway, that's enough of me talking. I'll let past Myles continue and I'll get back on with this editing. Bye, Internet. Sometime between the early and mid-20th century, the Krebs started synthesizing Laetrile. Now remember, Laetrile is just the hydrolyzed version of amygdalin, the compound that is found in almond seeds, that is found in apricot kernels. Now the reason why they did this is because they had a patent on Laetrile, but they didn't have a patent on amygdalin. So, this is all about making money. Yeah. Anyway, the reason why we don't have a specific date when they started to do this is because both father and son gave out massively different dates, and the reason why they did this was to get around US law. Anyway, what we do know is in 1950 they started promoting it as a cancer cure-all, before changing their minds and saying, oh no, it's not a cancer cure-all, it'll just help people with cancer, before changing their minds again and rebranding it, as it says here, as vitamin B17, saying, oh wait, no, it's not a drug, it's a vitamin, to try and get it passed as just a supplement, before changing their minds again, saying, no, if you take this, it will prevent you from getting cancer in the first place. It's all a scam, people. It's all a scam. The Krebs soon attracted the attention of the California Medical Association, who had been inundated with cancer sufferers asking about Laetrile. So they went to the Krebs and said, okay, you've apparently got this cancer magical panacea. We want to see any data that you have showing that it is a panacea. To which Krebs Sr. said, oh, we did limited trials, but we accidentally destroyed the research. Well, I don't know about you, but I buy that. I buy that. Go ahead. Sell it. Get it out there. The California Cancer Commission then evaluated the records of 44 patients treated according to the Krebs recommendations, and discovered that within 2 years of the first of these patients being treated with Laetrile, 19 had already died, and that there was no evidence that the compound helped any of the others. They were also able to obtain a small supply of Laetrile for animal tests on 3 different cancers, which all produced negative results. Scientists have never been able to find any valid evidence that backs up the Krebs. This stuff is pure quackery. Even to this day, in 2019, there is no evidence that suggests that Laetrile, amygdalin, or apricot kernels or anything like that can help fight, treat, or diagnose cancer. It is all pure quackery. This stuff, when you consume it, will simply break down in your body, releasing hydrogen cyanide that will poison you. But did that stop the Krebs? No, it didn't. They continued pushing their quackery. In 1956, Krebs Jr. was introduced to Andrew McNaughton of the McNaughton Foundation, whose function it was to sponsor independent research to advance ideas contrary to prevailing scientific opinion. Over the course of 3 days, Krebs Jr. convinced McNaughton of Laetril's anti-cancer properties, and he began promoting, producing, and distributing the compound. McNaughton would later go on to arrange a freelance writer named Glenn to write the book Laetrile, Control for Cancer, which had an initial press run of 500,000 copies. The book gained the attention of a school teacher called Hoffman, who had undergone a mastectomy back in 1959. Now, she believed this book. She went all the way up to Canada, to the McNaughton Foundation or whatever it's called, and she was given Laetrile. However, she wasn't able to find an American doctor that would give her it, so she went to Mexico where she found someone who would. Hoffman became convinced that Laetrile had controlled and even cured her cancer. She was one of its biggest supporters up until she died in 1969 of cancer. While she was still alive, she formed the International Association for Cancer Victims and Friends, whose purpose it was to educate the general public to the options available to cancer patients, especially terminal cancer patients, which usually involved promoting Laetrile. Contreras, the former Mexican army pathologist who originally injected her with Laetrile, expanded his clinic and added translators to his staff to accommodate for the influx in American patients. In 1970, he constructed a new clinic named Oasis of Hope, where still, to this day, they offer alternative cancer treatments. I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to get a hold of a copy of this Laetrile Control of Cancer malarkey book to add to my collection of quackery, but it is far too expensive, so I cheaped out and got this book here, which has, quite frankly, the better title. Too Young to Die, the dramatic story of a young man's triumph over terminal cancer through Laetrile and nutrition. Rick Hill, B17, and there's a picture of him and his lovely family there. Now this book, what a letdown. I should have cheaped out. Really, really boring. First half of the pages, first half of the book even, is just about him not really liking doctors and being told that he has cancer and he's probably not going to make it. These doctors haven't been mean to him or really that overly rude to him. It's just they're not really friendly to him. And he goes into a bit more detail about why he went down the Laetrile and the alternative route. Basically, it was out of desperation and the fact that he was poor living in America, where you guys have a different healthcare system over there. Kind of boring, kind of dull, but the reason why I bring it up is I want to bring attention to these books online. Yeah, this is a retro one, which is the reason why I got it, but there are still books to this day that are being published that say that Laetrile, this stuff that will release hydrogen cyanide in you, and apricot kernels and amygdalin that all do the same, that this stuff is a cancer cure, and you can find it on eBay, you can find it on Amazon, in fact you can find the blooming kernels themselves. Now, you can't walk into a shop, you can't walk into a healthcare store anymore, well, as of 2019, and buy this stuff, because governments and shops know that it is super toxic, that it will break down in your body to produce hydrogen cyanide. A few years ago, you could actually do it here in the UK. Anyway, so you can buy this stuff really easily here online, and I love this one. I love this one so much, because I got it from everydaysuperfoods.co.uk, lowest price guaranteed, free delivery. So yeah, I got it from a food company. But it says on the front, not for consumption due to high amounts of amygdalin, vitamin B17. Why would a food company sell something that you can't eat? They're trying to pass it off as like a cosmetic? No, they're selling this stuff. Come on now, let's tune into Santi FM here. They're selling this stuff so people can eat it. And they've just got that warning on the front to protect them. Yeah, it's dodge. It's all dodge as hell. With the growth in popularity of Laetrile in America, it was only a matter of time before the American government stepped in and said, listen, f*** off with this, and they started to seize Laetrile shipments. Now, they even got the Krebs to agree not to synthesize the compound for 3 years whilst they investigated it. How did they get them to do this, you're probably asking? Well, it was part of a flea bargain after the Krebs were going to get sent down for shipping another unproven quackery drug. These people are snake oil salesmen. They're complete quacks. The Krebs family would once again find themselves returning to court several more times for disobeying regulatory orders forbidding the interstate shipment of Laetrile, failing to register as a drug manufacturer, and violating probation by continuing to advocate Laetrile, which landed Krebs Jr. in the county jail for 6 months. In an attempt to prevent any further legal action and to go round the laws regarding the safety and effectiveness of new drugs, Krebs Jr. would start claiming that Laetrile was in fact a vitamin. which, as I've already said, he dubbed vitamin B17. He did this, by the way, at the same time as the McNaughton Foundation was attempting to have Laetrile recognised as a drug. Contrary to what proponents of Laetrile will have you believe, the compound's anti-cancer properties were thoroughly investigated. The National Cancer Institute tested Laetrile in animals on 5 separate occasions between 1957 and 1975 and found, time and time again, that it was not effective against cancer. 4 independent cancer research centres undertook additional studies in 1975, and they too found no evidence of Laetrile's cancer-fighting properties. Still to this day, there is no evidence whatsoever of Laetrile's mythical magical properties. None. Due to the constant promotion of Laetrile from the likes of the Krebs, Hoffman while she was still alive, and the McNaughton Foundation, it was only a matter of time before vulnerable people started to die, and media attention was put on this quackery. I want to take a bit of time to talk about one of these examples. You see, there was a boy called Joseph who was 9 years old and who was suffering from Hodgkin's disease. Now, his parents decided not to get him the appropriate treatment, instead opting to give him Laetrile. Now, the New York authorities actually got involved and wanted to put him in care and get him the treatment that he needed. However, his parents sued and won and got to decide what treatment he was going to receive. The judge stated that
this court also finds that metabolic therapy has a place in our society, and hopefully, its proponents are on the first rung of a ladder that will rid us of all forms of cancer.
Joseph's disease back in those days had a 95% survival rate of 5 years. However, Joseph died within 2 years. In the 1980s, in response to political pressure, the National Cancer Institute undertook a clinical trial. They followed 178 cancer patients who had received Laetrile at a Quack cancer centre willing to give them it. The results of the trial should have been the final blow for Laetrile, as not one patient was cured or even stabilised. The median survival rate was 4.8 months from the start of therapy, and tumour size had increased in those who had survived. In addition, several patients experienced symptoms of cyanide toxicity, or had blood levels of cyanide approaching the lethal range. As the Laetrile fancy faded away, those who once promoted it switched back to things like apricot kernels. After all, they contain amygdalin, which is just the unhydrolyzed version of Laetrile, and what's better, now they can promote it as an all-natural cancer cure. Hooray! Now I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but I'm going to say it again. This stuff, like Laetrile, will be broken down in the body and will release hydrogen cyanide. It's just as dangerous. I first became aware of this quackery back in 2012 when I read an article published in the Sunday Mirror. The article reported that 78-year-old fellow Smoggy, that's someone from Middlesbrough, had cured his incurable colon cancer through diet alone. Alan was told he had colon cancer back in 2011 and had around 22 centimeters of his colon removed. He underwent a 3-month course of chemotherapy but was later told that the cancer had spread to his small intestines. The doctors decided that he wouldn't benefit from any more chemotherapy, so he decided to find his own cancer cure. He looked online and he talked to people in his local health store, and he came up with his all-singing, all-dancing diet. He began replacing red meat and dairy products with 10 portions of raw fruit and vegetables each day. But he believed that one of the crucial ingredients of his new diet was a teaspoon of powdered barley grass in hot water each morning. Months later, he received a letter from the hospital saying that his cancer had all gone. Alan said, "There is no question in my mind that my diet saved my life." Alan's story is a difficult one to debunk, partially due to the sensitive nature, but also because of patient-doctor confidentiality. We can't just go to him or his doctor and say, "Hey, I want to see all the medical records. I want to see what therapy he had. I want to see what he's like now." We can't do that. We have to take Alan on his word. Now, to give his story a bit more oomph, the people who created this story did one of the worst photoshops I've ever seen, where they kind of cut Alan's torso and moved it a little bit to make him seem more healthy, to give a bit more oomph to his story. Now, the reason why Alan believed that this wheat barley grass could have some kind of effect on his cancer was because barley grass powder, thought to raise the alkaline level of the blood, reducing acid. Cancer loves acid. So this is obviously a reference to Dr. Robert, sorry I got that wrong, hang on a sec, Mr. Robert Young's pH miracle, a theory that all of mankind's diseases just spontaneously generate in the human body when your blood is too acidic. That's right, you could be sat there, having a cup of tea, your blood's slightly acidic and boom, HIV. Yeah. Anyway, another superfood on Alan's list is, you guessed it, apricot kernels. Organic apricot kernels, thought to break down cancer cells. Alan's story really struck a nerve with me. It wasn't because of how irresponsible it was of the authors to publish such a potentially dangerous piece in a national newspaper. It wasn't because Alan himself was teetering between the line of victim and quack. It was because Alan was from Middlesbrough. Alan was from Teesside. Alan was a smoggy like me. Now, up until this point, I'd only ever talked about victims of quackery who lived quite far away from me, so there was a kind of disconnect there. But now I'd been confronted with people living right next to me who had fallen for quackery, and I saw red. Now, I tried to follow the story, but to be honest with you, the couple of months after it all went a bit dark. And then a family member approached me and said, "Hey, do you remember that newspaper story that you wouldn't shut up about for a month? Well, I saw it. I saw it in the window of a health food store." And I was like, "Wait, what? Where?" So they told me where it was. I jumped in the car, I went down, and lo and behold, there it was in the window for everyone to see. This shop was proudly saying, "Hey, we sold quack cures to a terminally ill man. And not only that, if you're terminally ill, why don't you come in? We can sell you the same stuff." So I go into the shop and asked to speak to the person who gave Alan his advice. I was told, "Oh, she's not working today, but you can come back in 2 days' time." So I come back in 2 days' time, to the surprise of the people working behind the counter, and I asked to speak to her. So she comes from the back, I introduce myself, I smile, I say who I am, I say that I'm a YouTuber, and that in my free time I make videos debunking pseudoscience and quackery of all kinds, which, when I say out loud, sounds really lame. Anyway, I say I've got some serious issues with that article that you've got pinned up in your window, and I was wondering if I could talk about some of the claims made in it. Let's start off with the simple stuff. Let's talk about changing someone's blood. Now, Alan says that you can change the pH of your blood by eating this barley grass powder, which he got from this store. Can you tell me about that? So she frantically goes to the shelf, pulls off one of these grass powder things and starts reading it, and there's this really awkward silence, and I'm like, okay, I think I know where he got this from. I think he got it from this Mr. Robert Young pH Miracle thing here. And I pull out my book because I come prepared this time. And I'm like, okay, this is pure nonsense. And I start to talk about it. And there's just this eyes glazed over. And I'm like, okay, I'm boring her. And I'm also being overly preachy. Don't do this. Let's ask her another question. So I asked her another health question. And it became very apparent very early on. You're talking like within a minute that she didn't have a clue what she was talking about. She just didn't care whatsoever. And then I just realised that she's nothing more than a 9 to 5 snake oil salesman. She didn't care about Alan. She didn't care about what she was selling. She just regurgitated this bollocks without even thinking about it. And I realised this was just going to be a waste of both of our times. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to skip to the end here. So I was like, okay, I have serious concerns with this article in your window. I think it's incredibly misleading. I think it gives a lot of false hope to desperate people out there. And I also think, because of the apricot kernels, it's potentially deadly. Would you please remove it from your store window? I'm a scientist. I've looked into the claims Alan's made over the last 2-3 months, and I could go through everything, showing you how they're rubbish if you've got time and patience, and if I'm not already boring you. But skip to the end. Please remove it. I think it's doing a lot of harm. And she replied back by saying something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, well, if people are desperate, they're willing to try anything. Which isn't really answering my question. And also, what? As if that was a reply. I remember just being like, what? Taken back by it. And so I asked again, I was like, please, no. It's rubbish, and it can create hydrogen cyanide, one of the things you're recommending in your shop window. You shouldn't be encouraging critically ill people to consume this. And I could see that I was getting nowhere. So I smiled. I said, thank you for talking to me and spending the time to, talk to me. You didn't have to do this. And I walked out the shop. Yeah. And it was still there a week or so later. Over the next few weeks, I would get in contact with some of the key players in this story. I would get in contact with a spokesperson from the newspaper. I would get in contact with a guy called Gary Zeal, who helped Alan out with a part of his diet. I got in contact with Alan himself. And what I found was a perfect storm of quackery, catalyzed by ridiculous claims made online. No one person was to blame for Alan's diet, for Alan's miracle cure, for Alan's story being published, but they were all amplifying one another and capitalizing on Alan's desperation. It was a really weird story where you couldn't point the finger at one person. You couldn't point it at the woman at the health food store. You couldn't point it at this Gary Zeal guy who gave him a bit of advice. You couldn't point it at Alan in his desperation, or the people at the newspaper who were just publishing a crappy piece to fill a quota. It was a really weird story, and just goes to show that these things can just amplify on their own, and before you know it, thousands of people are being advised a diet that can that can poison them with cyanide. Even my local newspaper, the Evening Gazette, helped to proliferate the spread of quackery and Teesside. 3 years prior to Alan's story, they published a piece on fellow smoggy and cancer victim Debbie and her trips to the Oasis of Hope. Do you remember that place I was talking about at the beginning, where she was injected with mega vitamin B17? Nowhere does it mention that there is no evidence of B17's anti-cancer properties, or that B17 isn't really a thing, or that the compound that she was injected with is known to cause cyanide poisoning. The story of Laetrile is not a story about a suppressed cancer cure by pharmaceutical companies, scared that if the general public find out about it, it will hurt their bottom line, and the governments that are in their pocket. The story of Laetrile is about two con men who patented a compound that is known to produce hydrogen cyanide in the human body so they could sell it as a quack cancer cure to vulnerable people, and so they could make money off people dying. That's what this story is about. Now the sad truth is, so long as we have disease, there is always going to be these people. There are always going to be these snake oil salesmen. There are always going to be these charlatans pushing their quackery. And that's why it's really important to stand up to this stuff, no matter if you think it's beneath you or if you think it's low-hanging fruit, because people are affected by this. Desperate people will try anything. Now, I want to end this video by saying two things. First of all, I want to thank Quack, who have really helped me out with this video. In fact, they've done pretty much all the research for this video. The second thing I'd like to share with you lovely, fantastic people of internet land is an email that was sent to me from someone who originally believed in some form of quackery, but after watching my video realized that, hey, it's a load of baloney. Now, the reason why I'm sharing it with you is not to give myself a pat on the back, it's to show you that this kind of content is needed, and hopefully it's to convince you fine, fantastic, devilishly handsome internet people to start making your own content, to make your own videos, your own blog posts, your own podcasts. Because quackery, as I keep saying, is having a bit of a renaissance. It's everywhere, and it seems to be promoted by social media. It seems to be like wildfire, and we need people to counter it. We need people to help those who are desperate, who have fallen for these snake oil salesmen. And we need to get out of this mentality that the people who fall for it had it coming. Because that's just a really awful way of thinking. So anyway, I'm going to end with this email and hopefully encourage you to make similar content. So I'm going to go, internet. Take care.
For years, I've traveled the murky world of online miracle cures and looked into quackery, which has included turpentine, colloidal silver, wheatgrass, and all manner of other miracle cures. I've sometimes gone down the proverbial rabbit hole and believed, temporarily, some of this shit online. Thankfully, however, common sense kicks in before I cause myself any damage. Until I find a correct diagnosis for my mild collection of mystery ailments, I'll still keep searching. However, people like you stop the damage. Your videos are pretty much an online emergency service for conspiratards such as myself. I've never bothered to reach out to respond to anyone whom I've encountered online, but I just wanted to say this. Please do not underestimate the importance of your educated, insightful, courteous, and sensible service. For desperate people, you are incredibly important.